Welcome to Declutter for Change, the podcast where we clear the visible and invisible clutter from your mind, body, soul, and home to make room for the life you actually want to live and love. I'm your host, Heather Clark, and we are joined today by Stephanie Ford to explore how to solve decision fatigue by understanding your executive function and designing a sensory environment where your brain can actually thrive. Stephanie Ford is an occupational therapist with 20 years of experience in disability and complex needs. She is currently disrupting standard professional performance expectations by shifting away from the traditional private practice to apply sensory and information processing science directly to teams and work practices. She helps organizations and professionals understand the foundational reason why people struggle, thrive, or clash in the workplace. Instead of treating productivity, leadership, and success as a personal failing, Stephanie applies science to the actual work processes. She collaborates with her clients to design work environments, routines, and expectations where individuals and teams can finally function at their absolute best. Hello, Stephanie, and welcome. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to chat.
Perfect. And just to let you know, Stephanie is coming to us from the future, or I'm coming to her from the past because she's coming to us all the way from Australia. So thank you so much for taking time in your morning before you head out to record this podcast with us. That's so much appreciated.
It's lovely.
Perfect. So one of the things I'd like to know, so how did you become an occupational therapist? Because I ask everyone, I'm like, were you 4 or 5 years old and be like, that's what I wanted to do when I grow up? Or was it something throughout school, et cetera? And then how did you come into the online space as well?
Sure. I actually was doing a random book the other day, and it was like, what were you going to be as a child? I think I always thought I'd be a teacher. My parents are teachers, and so we were immersed in that space. And so I think that was where I think that helping element was probably what always felt like a place that I would go. When I was in high school, I did work out the other week. My mum had a girl in her class who had significant physical cerebral palsy. And while in her class in year 4, they worked out and they had to do lots of technology to work out, could she actually read? Because she would turn the pages or tell the aide to turn the pages. And my mum was like, yeah, but is she actually reading that, or is she just letting you think that she's reading it? And I think that was probably an element where it was lots about her power wheelchair. It was lots about her communication. I think that probably then shifted my thinking to occupational therapy around more that practical problem solving, helping people to live their life, even though they might have a difficulty. So I think that's probably where it then shifted. And then I very much went from high school straight into my degree in locally here. And I love my profession. I love occupational therapy and what we do. The systems right now drive me insane, but I love problem solving with people. I love seeing the change and even the realization sometimes that what has been hard, there are options to mean it can be easier. And for me, that's been really beautifully empowering and wonderfully value adding, because it's not about me doing it. It's about me empowering someone else or setting something else up for someone to live their life, often to have independence, have freedom, do things they enjoy again, which is beautiful. They get so happy and they're often in a better place. So, yeah.
That is fantastic. So then how did you decide to bring this? Because I know this is also something that you do virtually as well. So what part of that? Because obviously if it's virtual, like you're in Australia, and if you had somebody in Canada, it's like, you can't physically be there. You could, but
I'd love to. Let me know.
It's like, yes. But how is it that you brought this online, and what kind of specialties do you work through virtually?
Yeah. So I think probably COVID did a lot of that, moving the profession online.
COVID did a lot, that's for sure.
Yep. So I've always worked in a consultative method as an OT. There's often very clinic-based occupational therapy practices, but I've always worked in a consultation way. So for us here, when we were in COVID, it didn't really shift a lot of what I did, because I could do that over a video call and go, okay, what's been happening? What needs to change? How can we problem solve that? I didn't physically always have to be in the space. So it's then allowed us to do that more and more. And for me, it's around increasing how I can reach more and more people that just don't always live in my backyard. What we do and the helping other people to, again, understand how they work, what might be happening for them, what's impacting in their environment. Yes, it helps when I can sit in that environment, but I don't have to be in that environment to mean I can have an understanding, I can offer suggestions, and also help other people to come up with their own problem-solving ideas by being and listening ear and having a practical problem-solving thought process. So
that is so incredible. Like, it's so crazy. Yes, as much as COVID caused a lot of issues, it did help a lot more with the technology. It helped a lot more people be receptive of having the help online versus just trying to find a local OT or anything like that, and doctor or anybody. Let's just say that anybody now. So with that, one of the topics that we were talking about today for today's podcast was a decision fatigue and how the listeners, and I know I have definitely, like, I probably have decision fatigue from just last week cooking dinner, but how do you help in that with the executive functioning and stuff like that with all of your clients? Or what kind of tips do you have for those high achieving women that want to do it all and want to make all the decisions, but then all of a sudden get to the burnout stage?
yeah, absolutely. And I have to agree, Heather. I'm the same. I've been in burnout a couple of times. And I, even in Christmas time, was like, I'm just going to tap out of the world. I'm just going to do school holidays, right? And after 5 weeks, because it was school holidays, I could just say that was my reason. It was great. I then could reflect and go, pretty sure I was close to burnout again.
You're like, I'm pretty sure my body said, let's just take a break before we have to break.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I had somebody interestingly say to me not long after, yeah, but that's great, but how do we keep on doing the everything? And I think sometimes it can be really insightful just around understanding how we as an individual are working, because we have such a drive, and as driven women, professional women running businesses, executives, anything, holding multiple balls in the air, we do have such a societal thing of we'll just keep going. And we can hold all the balls in the air, right? And I love, someone years ago had an analogy of, yes, but is it a glass ball or is it a plastic ball? Because if it's a rubber one, let it bounce, it'll be fine, and we'll pick it up later. But which of them are glass balls? Because those ones are going to make a real big mess. Then it's going to be even more decision making. It's going to take more effort. So let's just make sure we hold those ones safe and then let the rubbery bouncy ones bounce, because they won't make extra work for us later. We'll just kick them together and pick them up.
Actually, it's funny that you say about the bowls, because just last week I was telling one of my girlfriends, I was like, hi, so that spinning bowl you've got up in the air, or spinning plate, how about you just pass that off to your VA? And you don't have to worry about that. You just have to get whatever it is. So it's such a thing for us to have so many things on the go and think we have to do it all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think in that executive functioning and decision fatigue, and the reason I wanted to connect those two together, and we were talking about decision fatigue today, is that when I think about, and for me OT-wise, and I think function, and for us to do any activity, one of those many we have in our heads going ready at the time, is there's actually a really detailed process. And information processing has this 32-step kind of skills that we are often subconsciously doing to mean we can succeed in doing something. And I really find it's insightful for people when we break it down, but also it can be really insightful because to make a decision, we have to use our highest level executive functioning, which is that questioning, analyzing, judging, contextualizing to time, all of these really high level things, but we're usually doing it over and over and over and over again because we've got so many glass balls in the air. So we have to make a decision for every one of those, or 5 per ball. And so when we're relying on that high executive functioning, we actually need all the underlying systems of how we work to be in alignment and to be well functioning. And I think that it feels complicated when I say it, but when I break it down, like to do and have easy in inverted commas, executive functioning and decision making, when I clinically support people, we often look at, the things that affect our executive functioning. It's stress, it's sleep, it's hormones, it's the sensory information around us. Like, is our nervous system in calm, or is it actually in shutdown, or is it in overload? And each single one of those things then affects how our executive functioning works. So not about it being an executive woman and a businesswoman, but I have a teenager who changed schools because our school year has started a couple of weeks ago. And he changed high schools. And luckily my husband was at work most of that week for very long hours, which always makes it easy because one person managing an unregulated teenager is hard work. But I sat there at one point going, I can literally look at this table of hierarchy. He's a very intelligent child. He was at the bare minimum and made some really poor choices. And when I stopped and looked, I was like, you're stressed. You are so anxious. You're hitting puberty. So fun.
Yes, and so much fun.
So much fun. And probably tired because you're stressed, so you're not sleeping properly. And so he didn't question or analyze or judge anything. He just did. And I was like, what are you doing? But it's when you actually have that understanding that we actually almost can't do those hard decisions, lots of decisions, that continuous question, analyze, judge, move to the next thing, if we are in a really unregulated state of stress, exhaustion, nervous system overload. And as busy women and as women who do lots, we often will churn on through and we'll just work it out.
That eternal keep going, keep going. Yes.
Yeah. Push through, you'll be fine.
Yep.
What's the other one? It's a stage. Is it really? Like
what is
stage? Yeah. So, and I think it then becomes this, what's the flow-on effect? Because then we have, I don't know about you guys, but we have lots of conversation happening around cortisol overload and cortisol stress. We then dip into that adrenal responses. Like if we're then in a fight-flight response because we're so stressed extensively, it actually has quite long health disadvantages to us.
Oh, for sure. And I actually just recorded a podcast episode with somebody who was talking about the weight and how the stress causes that weight gain. So of course it's just a cycle because it's just a matter of like, you see now the stress physically. So now you're stressed about the stress that stressed you out in the first place.
Yep, living that one too. Absolutely. And then, then you have health professionals who say, will you decrease your stress? I don't know about anybody else, but I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll just click my fingers and that'll be gone.
Like telling somebody who's up, all stressed out and mad and just calm down.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
Like listeners, you can't see my eyebrow just went like raised, like
absolutely.
Like 10 inches above my head.
Absolutely. And so I think it's that whole, I'm terrible at taking on those sorts of things on, I had one person, health professional, just maybe do some meditation. I was like, oh, go jump. In amongst which spare time, and sure, because my brain turns off. It never turns off. Very rarely. But what I often talk to people about is how do we set ourselves up and how do we set our environments up to allow us the opportunity to regulate our system. And I am not a dreamer too much. Probably should do it more. But, I often say to people, just let's start with 5 minutes. I don't know if anybody's aware of the James Clear Atomic Habits. I love that book. He's like, that habit stacking, but just start with like 5 minutes. I think he even talks about going to the gym and just walking in the gym. Don't go to the gym. Don't do anything. Just
training your body with something you already do. You're already going here. Okay, make a stop there so it becomes that habit.
Yep.
It's nothing major. It's not a crazy decision you have to make. It's not a glass bowl. It's just a rubber one. If it falls down and it bounces. You can pick it back up and put it back on.
Yeah. And there was another book I read, I think it was the 12-month challenge. I will have to go and find it so I can say who wrote it. But she was I think she was even an American, but she did a challenge where she challenged every month. She did a different thing. So like, I don't know why, but she chose January to be no alcohol. And then like she did she ran in February and she only ate meat in March. Like she had a particular thing that was researched and she did that for a month and to then evidence the outcome and the change. And one of those things was for her, I think she did 3 minutes. I think she did a minute of sit-ups, a minute of push-ups, and a minute of squats every night when she went to bed. And she's like, everyone's like, well, that's a waste. It's 3 minutes. What difference is that going to make? But at the end of the month, at the end of the month, she actually had physiological change because there was something. So I guess for me, I often talk to people about if it's too big, because often we're overloaded. We're in this space. We're in decision fatigue. We're in overload. We're in burnout because we're pretty much at our limits. So I don't ever say to people, let's do this program, because I've told people where to go with those ideas. What I will say to people is just think of a tiny little thing that can make a positive difference. So is it? Like for me, at one point, I was walking my kids to the bus, which is literally only about 300 meters down the road. Yeah. But that meant that I actually left. I got out. I walked in the fresh air on a sunny day, and it was 10 minutes. But that allows then to have that change of environment. It gives you vitamin D, it gives you oxygen, it gets your blood flow. So,
well, and I bet you multiple times of that, you're like, oh, I don't want to do this, but you still did it anyway. So you're even building that muscle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for me, I'm a gym person, and that is my go-to. That is my stress relief. Mm-hmm. And similarly, I had actually a personal trainer say to me at one point, I was like, I got 20 minutes that I jam in between work appointments. And she was like, is that really all you can fit? I was like, mate, that's more than I've been fitting. So that's what I've got available. And she was like,
that's what you're getting.
That's right. She was like, it's not going to work. And interestingly, after a couple of months, she was like, yeah, wow, that's actually like made a difference. I was like, who would have thought? And again, like, you know, you start with 15, and I similarly, I'm a morning person. Over 12 months ago, I started with the early morning at the gym, and, you know, 20 minutes, just drive there, go to the gym, 20 minutes, drive home, get back before the kids wake up, and then do the morning shift. Now I'm usually there for 35, 40 minutes. And, you know, I went on the weekend because I was jack of my family inside four walls in the rain. And so, you know, I think I was there for 45 minutes, and I was like, how good is this? But you build that over time. Yep. You don't start. If I had said I'm going to go for 45 minutes, it wouldn't have even started, let alone lasted a month.
Well, and that's it. Like, that's why, like, even with decluttering, like when I teach people, I was like, listen, if all you have is the 2 minutes to put something back where where its actual home is, then go do that. And just do that day in and day out.
And even like
that's the decision you make.
Totally. And like, even if it's, again, that habit stacking concept of, don't have to make a decision on when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it. When you put the plastics back in the plastic straw, just put the lids all back together when you're putting them in a pile. Like, don't make it a whole process. Don't clean the whole plastic straw. That ends up all over the kitchen floor. Let's be honest.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, there's plenty of things out where you open the cupboard and everything comes out. Yeah.
But if you just pick a piece within what you're doing, you have to take the plastics out of the dishwasher or off the strainer. When you put them back in, just pick all the lids back together in the same place that they belong. That means that it's not overwhelming. It's not another decision you have to find the time to fit in, because we don't have that, because we're actually functioning in. And like, even the core foundational executive functioning stuff is, can we start? Can we effectively know when to stop? Can we recall all the steps? Can we contextualize to time and duration? So, like, you know, does it actually take us the amount of time we're expecting, and in the time it really should take us? Or is that actually out of it as well, because we're, you know, procrastinating, or we're, you know, working and then we're doing 5 other things at the same time as trying to get that report
done? The multitasking, I promise you, multitasking is not good for anyone. So if
Never.
you are a multitasker, stop doing that alone. No, it's like to calm down.
Absolutely multitasker. But then it's also that understanding. So like a whole nother topic that I talk about is then sensory processing. So like, why are we multitasking? Like in understanding ourselves on what are we doing that? Why do we do that? What are we doing that for? And what's the outcome we're trying to achieve? Is it a visual change of perception? Is it that we actually need to move because our arousal is so low that we're actually, I can't do this, or I don't know where to go, and that I don't know how to make a decision, I don't know what to write. Like I write OT reports that often bust my brain, and some days I've had moments in the last couple of weeks I'm like, I don't even know where to start. Like I literally do not know what to put in that piece of paper, on that piece of paper. And so that then means that we procrastinate, we delay. But if we then look at how can we effectively function, is it like understanding ourselves? Are we someone that needs to have a cup of tea, sit quietly, do a much better job of meditating than I ever could, and breathe to calm your nervous system down, to then mean you can actually contemplate, question, analyze, and judge to make those really good decisions? Or are you someone who needs to move because sitting still means your body goes, oh, I'm going to go to sleep? Like I have to in my house.
Well, and that's where a lot of people have like the walking mats underneath and they're standing up desk now, because that's the same thing. At least their body's doing something so that their brain can do the thing it actually wanted to do.
Absolutely. Because I often talk, when we talk sensory processing, and because it's an innate, it's a organic thing that our body is needing. So even though we sit here going, just write the report, our brain is actually going, I need to move. Like I actually am about to fall asleep. I need to move. I need to do something. And despite how much we push past that, our brain is going to override our cognitive processing because it's a subconscious need. So if we are exhausted and all our body is going, I just want to sleep, then it's probably going to be the first thing that on repetition.
There's been plenty of times where I've went to go do something and I've literally had to sit back and go, is it worth my time to step back from it fully today? And I push it to tomorrow's thing and I give myself that rest. Sometimes I actually even have the nap, man. Like I love naps. Like I am so on for naps and stuff like that. But is it worth, because if I were to continue and I said, no, I'm going to push through this. A, I know I'm going to get frustrated. B, I know I'm going to do a piss poor job of actually whatever it is, whether it's client work, whether it's my own work, whether it's, my own stuff or anything. And then it's like, and then when I go back and I read, I'm going to probably have to do it again. So now I'm doing that exact same thing twice. And that is one of my biggest pet peeves ever, is having to do the same thing twice. Like just today. So I'm part of a mastermind and I had to fill, like every day we fill out a form. I don't know what my internet or my phone was doing, but I had to fill out that form 3 different times. And I literally put in the comments, like, how are you feeling? Each time it went different. I said, listen, when I was first filling out this form, I was fine. Second time, I'm getting a little frustrated. By the third time, if this doesn't go through, I swear to God, I'm going to jump out of the mastermind altogether. It was just one of those.
Yeah.
And that was like 8:00 this morning.
Yeah, I totally understand. I'm with you. I hate that. If it hasn't happened, I'm like, oh, later, I'm not doing it anymore. Absolutely. So it's about understanding how we can work best, and understanding our individually. And also then I find it's then another layer of, as busy women, often with more responsibilities, is how are the other people in our spaces processing and how do they work? Because so often that can be part of our environmental factors. So, we're working as teams. If we're executives, we've got staff underneath us, as mums, as partners. How then do those other people in our environment then affect our executive functioning, our information processing, and our decision fatigue? So
yes. There's actually a quote that I've used in my past, and I've actually got it coming up in one of my social media posts, is stop using my brain to remember your stuff.
Oh, that is my house life.
Because there has been many times where I've been the walking calendar. Like in my younger years, I was the walking calendar. I remember everyone's birthday. Even my best friend of like 22, 23 years now or whatever, I'll say like happy birthday or happy anniversary. And she goes, how do you remember these things? Like, how do you I said, listen, I wish I couldn't. I wish my brain space could just stop remembering everything. Now, mind you, I also put everything into my calendars, but it's when other people ask you questions that are A, easily searchable, B, they can go look in their own calendar, or C, or whatever the case is. And it's like, how do you stop that from happening? And how do you, like, it's not even just your stuff now that you're trying to, like, figure out. It's other people's stuff. Like you were saying, like when you're in an office, my goodness, this is probably why I can no longer be in an office, is because of the fact of the amount of people that literally could walk down the hall and get the answer for themselves. But because you're the one that they see going and doing and being so productive, they're like, oh, well, I'll just ask you instead of doing it myself.
Yep.
And do you find that a lot of women who are in the corporate or who are in office spaces get a lot more decision fatigue or a lot more like frustrated quicker than those who are like myself, work from home, and I only have myself or my children to worry about?
Yeah, look, I absolutely do. And I think one of the other concepts I talk about for leadership and women in offices is also this concept of our buckets. We've got so many parts of our day in our life. And so I have often talked to other leaders about, you've used up the patient's bucket all day being professional and not telling that person what you really want to tell them and how you really feel about them. And so you've been professionally diplomatic and very patient with that person. And then what we find is we get home and then we have to work out what's for dinner. We have to navigate the homework. We have to get the child to shower, even though every night you need to shower. And our patient's bucket is actually pretty empty. And so then we have this really, then we have mum guilt. Then we have, women guilt of going, oh, I really need to be calmer and I need to be much nicer at home. But what is it that has got us to that point? And why do we have decision fatigue to go, I'm just going to do takeaway, I can't be bothered to cook? Because we've actually spent all day emptying those buckets. So having, again, that awareness on, is it empty or pretty empty? And how do we fill it with something, again, really small? Is there something on the drive home? My mum always used to say she worked like 5 minutes from home at one point, and she lasted about 2 years. And she's like, nope, that's way too close. She was like, 20 minutes is my minimum.
Longer of a drive.
Yeah, she's like, 20 minutes is the minimum because I need to go from workspace, have my drive, and then be able to turn back up at home in mum's space. My husband drives an hour and 15 each way to work. And even someone said to him today, like, how do you go with that? He goes, I think it's probably effective, really. And I'm like,
actually, I'll do it to save my marriage.
Yeah, I hate to think if he was closer. I'd love for him to be closer, but I'm not sure how that would go with the bucket balance.
Yes.
I'm thinking maybe if he got home, he'd have to get on his motorbike first before he came inside.
Well, and I know a lot of men and women too, but I know a lot of men where before they come home, they go to the gym. Like we're saying, like you're a gym person. Like I know that that's something that they do. Like even if it is, like you said, that 15, 20 minutes of just like that, whether it's the heavy weights, it's the like, because you know what, sometimes it's not always, kumbaya, whatever. You gotta have like there's that rage, there's that anger, and those are all healthy feelings as long as you put them and direct them in the proper way.
Absolutely. And understanding what your system needs to be able to fill your bucket, because that's right. For some people, that's a horrible, like, and I have a follow a lady, Mel Brown is a finance lady, and she often writes, my stupid or my effing walk for my effing mental health. She hates exercise, but she does it because she knows she needs to. So she hates the gym, but she often then talks about having been in menopause, and so the need for strength training to keep her bone density well and all these things. She's like, effing gym, but she does it for a purpose. But that's probably not the stuff that's going to fill her bucket. Yeah, that's going to empty her bucket. So it is knowing for yourself what are the things that will start to refill to give you that chance and give you the opportunity to have less decision fatigue, more opportunity to be accessing those executive functioning skills with a whole lot more ease, and having less nervous system overload, shut down, and all those, and the stress part, as we said.
Yes.
Because exactly, like I remember going through a divorce and child stuff, and me going to the gym was absolutely my savior, because it was nobody, like nobody, don't talk to me, don't, like, headphones on, music pumping, didn't answer my phone. It was just me. Nobody could change it. Nobody could take a control away. I could pump as hard as I liked, and it hurt, and it was all about me. It was nobody else's fault, and nobody else could impact that. So
for the same reason, the divorce, because again, a divorce is a huge emotional, mental, like, you want to talk about decision fatigue, like, oh my goodness, like the second time I self-repped, but the first time is when I started my cleaning business, because that same reason, I needed to be by myself. I needed something to be physical. I needed to be whatever. And because I couldn't clean up the mental, emotional parts, because those were in court, those were whatever, I was like, let me clean a house, because that came natural to me. So I was like, done. Let me make money to do something that comes natural to me. Perfect.
And then again, it's that element. It's really interesting. But also, if we're really busy women in leadership and having teams and decision fatigue, it's often, again, understanding, why is it so hard? Is it because, what's your processing style? So that's, again, and a whole nother topic. Are you a thinker and less of a doer, or are you the doer? And if things are not happening, that then creates stress, because then you don't see and you're not achieving what it is that you actually value and what's important to you. So understanding, but if you're a dreamer and you're happy letting someone else do it at their time, then you're probably chummy. But knowing what means that it fills your bucket, what gives you joy, what's important for you, to mean that then you feel like you've achieved things. Because, I'm the same. Like, I could happily paint a house. People hate that thought. But for me, I now understand it's because I start and I finish and it's complete. Because often my clinical work, it's never ending. Someone's got to add this bit in, and then it's, it sends it in, and the person goes, I don't think that's right. So then you got to argue it, and it's never actually complete.
Yes.
And
So you're the type of person that needs the beginning, middle, and the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And having those, if and it's understanding those things that affect your life, to mean that balance cannot mean that you're only doing the things that empty your bucket. So, it's doing the things that, you might need to do that do empty our bucket, but what are the things that help refill it? For me, it's something that is a start and a finish and it's done, because that means I'm like, okay, great, no more of that one. So, so whatever that might be, and even that sometimes for some people, the concept of, cleaning or decluttering, that can be really big. But if it's the fact that, you get to the end and you go, how good does that cupboard look? How good does that office space look, because it's now organized? It can also bring that refilling, because it actually brings you less stress. It brings you order, but it also means you've got a beginning and an end. If everything else is feeling a little out of control and you can't get it sorted, what is it that you can do to create that response and give you that refill on your bucket to go, see, can achieve shit. It's not always that I just can't ever get to the end, because it's about what's influencing those things for you.
That is fantastic. So one thing that I do want to just, for the listeners, when can they notice? Like, I know for myself, because I've been very aware and I've gotten to the end, the overwhelm, the whatever, but we want to stop it before it gets close to that. So what are some like warning signs? Like, I know for me, it's again, the anger, it's the frustration, it's all that stuff. But what have you seen with all of the women that you've worked with that are like, hey, here's a warning sign, pay attention. Like, otherwise the next step is going to be that crash and burnout.
Sure. And I think the hardest part is it's probably very individual. But
but I know that we've both probably seen it in many.
It probably comes back to unknowing our physiological responses. So, often then there's that talk about link with psychology around our emotions and our physiology. And often they talk about, what do we feel in our body? Like, do we have extra tension? Do we have pain? Because, where do we hold our tension? so it's about the physical responses, is it that what activities happen? And, do you notice your heart rate going up? Do you notice getting warm and sweaty? Because that's those responses are going, oh my gosh. And being able to then identify what is happening when those physiological things start to happen. And then I think it's also our actions and our responses, because often it's people will say, I've been really short.
Yes.
I can hear I'm not nearly as understanding. My tone is different. Some people don't have that awareness, but sometimes, I've got a shorter fuse is often what some people will say. So it's having those awareness that if that's not what you would normally have done, or you don't feel nice about that, it's probably a sign to tell you that something's not balancing out and not in the right space for you.
That's one thing I've noticed. I noticed, like, when my daughter's not in the right space, and she's only a teenager and stuff, but it's not necessarily what she says, it's the how she says it. And I'm like, ooh.
Yep.
So let's just put a pin on that. We'll come back to this, because this conversation, like, we're already like butting heads. I don't want to continue. I said, but pay attention to how things are said, because that's another indication, even with me, is if I had fed myself properly, if I got enough sleep, if I did all this stuff, if I had enough water, if I, was doing enough fun things, because that's another big thing that our listeners, I know that they don't do, because I'm terrible with it. But do you have enough fun mixed in with your work? But have I done those, as you said, filled enough of those pockets or the buckets, so that when I do communicate with somebody, I'm communicating today, tomorrow, the next day, the same way? Because when there's a change in that way, the way I speak to somebody, how short I am, like you said, with I'm waiting for them to finish their sentence or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, come on.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, I'm like, all right. I call myself Clark because I know so many Heathers, but I'm like, all right, Clark, there's something there. Like, let's sit with that. And what is that? What have you not done? And like I said, 9 times out of 10, it's because I haven't enough fun. I've been work mode. I've been doing whatever. I've been worried about everybody else around me. And I forget about myself. To a point where I've actually forgotten to eat. Like, let's just, I even said that in the last podcast recording. I was like, oh, I've even forgotten to eat sometimes. And I know that that's my crux. I know if I don't do that enough times, I'm going to get to the burnout.
Absolutely. And then I think it's also a little bit around, and that this is where I find we often end up in conversations, is the whole, okay, that's great. Now I know that I'm not in a good place and I'm on the way to burnout. And then people say to me, but what do I do about that? How do I stop it? How do I get out of it? And that's often the whole, I think, and what I've worked with people around is, it's then that setup of the strategies to mean you have that awareness to do the little things. Like, I had someone where they were literally overwhelmed by the world, let alone work. And so for us, we worked out, is it that you actually put on, I think we worked out, like, for this lady, she would wear loop earplugs of a morning to get her family off to school, because it just took away the extra crazy morning noise.
The noise, the extra whatever, it was the focus. Yep.
She could still hear what everyone was saying, Mum.
ADHD or ADD people as well, or like anyone who's autistic. It's when there's too much external stimulation, your internal just goes,
yes, absolutely. And so she worked out, if she did loops in the morning and then of an afternoon, she knew she could put her noise cancelling headphones on when, the kids were home and they were settled. That meant she got through to the end of the day in a much less heightened state. So it was about working out your own strategies across the day. And another one she uses was, she's just started a new job last week, and she was like, I'm going to put my joggers in the car because I'm in a new job and they've been living under my desk, because I have to put my joggers on and I go for a walk at lunch and then I come back to work and I'm fine.
Yeah.
So like, it's knowing the things that then make a difference for you and habit stacking them. Not about a whole strategy, not about a whole, new concept, but about working out the little things that we can add to mean, as you say, it is that there's more fun. We make sure for some people they meal prep to mean they know they're going to have the food across the week, because then we don't have to make decisions. I'm not a meal prepping person. I can't stand it. But even if I have
like a few times, and then other times I'm like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, same. My extent of meal prep is the groceries are in the freezer and I have what is in the freezer on the fridge. That's my element of meal prep. I still have to make it, but I don't have to work out what to make when. It's raining here and it's supposed to be a barbecue today. I'm like, I'm not barbecuing.
Like, nope, not happening.
That day to that day, that's my element of meal prep. But that has made a massive difference for me, because otherwise, exactly, I was getting to the point where I'd stand at the end of the day and go, I don't want to cook. I don't know what to. You can all just eat whatever.
I've definitely gotten to that point, especially because, so here's the other thing is, the worst part about it for me is my children are the type that they don't make a decision. Like my son's boss has even said, you are the worst at choosing. Because my son's like, I don't care. I honestly do not care what he eats for lunch or what he eats, what he goes, I don't care. And he's like, and to even ask him like, hey, what do you want for, meals this week? It's like, I don't know. Like, I don't even know what I want right now. Like kind of thing. And he's like, and I don't care. Like, if you're going to make it for me, and it's right in front of my face, I'll eat it.
Yeah.
But for me, being the only, almost the only adult, my son's about to be 18 this year, but I'm like, okay, sometimes I just go, all right, fend for all. I don't care. You fend for yourself, because I'm not making a decision and you don't want to make a decision. So therefore nobody's making a decision today, because that makes it easier for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really interesting one, because again, like we were talking about, staff and teams and home environments, that can get really big. Like, I was saying, I'll be done and my husband will get even a call. What are we going to do for dinner? I don't mind. No, I needed you to make the decision. I'm done. I've done enough decision making. I've done arguing all day. Just say, I feel like this. No, I don't mind. I don't really have any preferences. Damn it. I needed you to have a preference. And they're trying to be
we're going to create for everybody, because clearly dinner seems to be the biggest one. Because I feel, first of all, the reason why it's dinner probably is because it's at the end of the day, you've already dealt with your whole entire day, etc. But we should just do like a roulette. Build a roulette and just get AI to build us a roulette of like dinners or whatever, and just send that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I did have someone actually say they used AI. Like, this is what's in my fridge. Tell me what to make.
I've done that before. There actually is a what is it called? I forget what it's called, but it's a to-do thing. So it's got a whole bunch of different like productivity things, and one of them is a dinner, where you just type in what you have in your fridge, your pantry, etc., and it gives you. And I'm like, I have used that. I am not even like afraid to admit I have used that multiple times. And I'm like, oh yeah, that actually sounds really good, because there's some things that I'm like, I would never have thought about that.
Yep. And I think that's another interesting one too, Heather. It's like when we talk about decision fatigue, it's about utilizing strategies. So it's about setting up strategies. Is it that you have an app and you have a thing that says, here you go, I've made this decision for you. And when you've got capacity, like of a weekend, when you haven't emptied your bucket all day at work, you go, righto, I just have to put this information in. You can make the decisions during the week.
Yep.
I often will talk to people about like having a base. So, this is the things we need to do, or these are the things we're going to buy. So you at least shorten and decrease the decisions you have to make. So often people will say, I walk into the supermarket every day and I don't know what to buy. I'm like, oh, that sounds awful to me. So, it's about how can you decrease the number of decisions you need to make to still get to the end point. So by having, a weekly shop where you go, right, there is enough meat to make 6 meals.
You're like, there's enough meat that if I choose to not be the person, somebody can go and make it.
Absolutely. But you also yourself don't have to go, what meat shall we cook every night? So you're decreasing the number of decisions you're making yourself have to make every day. So, it's like when we talk about children and skill building, and people, we have a thing here in our disability system where it's all about choice and control. And it drives me to despair, because people will, of course, abuse that the wrong way. And, we'll have children and we have adults where they're like, oh, they chose not to have a shower. Like, that's not a choice. That's a bad choice.
Your job is to have a shower in the morning or the afternoon.
That's right.
But the
Absolutely.
point is, you still need one.
Or even it's not even, are you going to, it's not about if you're going to shower. Would you like to shower or would you like to bath? As a child, you need to clean. Or is it actually, are you showering now or after dinner? It's going to happen, but when is it going to happen?
And that's the thing. Like, the choice isn't yes or no. It's now or later. That's it. Like, those are your only choices.
That's right. So then that decision fatigue side of it is, you go to the supermarket, you stand in front of the meat section, you're like, there's this and this and this and this and this. Yep. And you're like, I don't know. So if you get home and you're like, there's 2 bits of meat left, is it that one or that one tonight? Like, that's making a much easier choice for yourself and decreasing that decision fatigue. Or, I have some people where we're like, there are 5 meals that we've listed on the fridge that are this week's meals. So then once you've cooked it, you tick it off. And then you get home, you're like, well, I'm choosing for 4, that's what's left,
Exactly. You're like, the process of elimination now.
Yeah, that's right. And then the reality is, as you get further through the week, when we inevitably are more exhausted and more stressed, there's actually less decisions for us to need to make because we only have 2 meals left on the fridge. Well, that's it is tonight. So we're actually supporting ourselves in easier decision making when we know our bucket is going to be probably less full.
Yes. And I think that's key, is just knowing how you, like, for me, all of my stuff usually that requires a lot of my brain power, a lot of my whatever is in the morning, because I know by about 2, 3 p.m. I'm like, either I'm having a nap or I'm walking away or doing something, because if I was to make decisions at that point, because I'm just a little tired, I've been working all day, I've been figuring out if the kids are here, or if they're at dad's, that's fine. But by that point, I know I'm like, okay, it's almost like that almost finish line. You're kind of finished your day, but you're not really, but you still got a thing. And it's like, So by that point, so that's why anything like major meetings, major things are always in the morning, or anything that takes a lot of my energy. Whereas things like a podcast recording, I can do at night because I love talking.
Totally. Absolutely.
Talk to people, to talk about what they enjoy and stuff. So those are the things that I'm okay with doing afternoons or in the evenings, or like you're doing in your morning. So
absolutely. But then it's exactly like for me, I'm happy doing it at 5 a.m., but I'm struggling to do a report at 5 a.m. because again, and then, if I do it like this in the morning, I've got an ordinary meeting today, but, I'm energized because I've had this great conversation. And so I'm, but if I had just come back from school drop off and come straight into reports, I'd be still sitting here wallowing, I'm sure, going, I don't want to do that report. Okay. But, I'm going to be energized. I'll get off from talking to you. And then I'm going to go ring the person and go, right, how are we going to finish this report? Because your energy is different.
Yes.
So it's about, and I absolutely love that. I think that's a really great thought is, that decision making around times of the day, times of the week, and
as
planning,
women, times of the month.
Times of the month, absolutely. I have to agree. Like, and even it's an interesting one, even for kids and the people we work with, because it's around that time of the month, but it's also that whole. I was actually listening to something this week, where a trainer that I follow was interviewing a doctor here in Australia who's specializing in menopause and perimenopause as a previous GP obstetrics, I think. But she was interestingly saying like the value of having understanding for humans and how we work to mean that we can be more ideal as leaders, to be meaning that, when for women in menopause, often the statistics say that people leave work and certainly go cut their hours just because they're not coping and, hormones suck. So being able to be aware of, how we can actually be managing, but also supporting our bodies when that's at a peak. So I'm the same, like I've had a couple of times where I've been in tears over work and I'm like, the world is ending is the way I often say. The bus is hit or the world is ending. And that's when I'm like, I think today's not a work day. Often we still have to turn up. But it's
well, and that's it. That's where that minimum, like what is the minimum you can do? So you can still go, hey, listen, I still did something, but I didn't do a lot of brain power. It wasn't emotional for me. It was just, I just did the bare minimum. And it's knowing that. And you can't know yourself if you're constantly in do, go motion. You have to have those lull moments of going, oh, right.
Yeah.
I can see what I did last week that I probably shouldn't have done.
And even too, like having that whole, we often have in work talk about like time priorities and things like that. But I think then we probably need to add into that about like, our decision priorities list. I know that I can write socials and I can do my marketing at all sorts of times of the day and when I'm really not wanting to do work. But if I was to push through to then write a clinical report, it's not going to be as good. So it's picking the times of the day, picking when our decision making and our prime working decisions are actually going to allow us to be most productive and therefore be meeting our KPIs, meeting our performance demands.
And that goes back to what I was saying earlier, where I make a decision like, is it going to take me twice as long to do this job? And then tomorrow I'm going to have to redo what I just did because I just did it crappily.
Yeah.
I don't think crappily is a word, but it is today.
Yeah.
But the other thing is too, I'm going to bring in the 4 pillars that were, this whole podcast and my entire business is it's a whole mind, body, soul, and your home deal. And it's a matter of just making sure that, it's not just showing up physically. It's your mind's there, your emotions are there. And then obviously setting up your home so that when you do come home, you have that extra 20-minute drive like your mom did. So that when she came home, it was a different story. So with that, with the whole mind, body, soul, home, do you have a tip for our listeners that they can walk away with or drive away with for a tip to help them with decision fatigue, etc. today?
Yeah, sure. I think the big one, I think, as you say, like that whole, the mind side of it is that our stress levels and our consciousness around how we are setting ourselves up to be able to make those decisions. So if we're pushing through to make decisions, but we are literally overwhelmed by the world and we are exhausted and we are stressed to the wazoo, then we're actually not allowing ourselves the capacity to. So I think the tip is, be aware of, is it hard? And if it's hard, don't just keep pushing. What are the mind, the soul, and the environmental things that you can actually do to help that be easier? Because it's often going to be influenced by something else.
Yes.
None of it, unfortunately, is a silo. So, when we move to then the body, if you are exhausted, and often people say, I've got no energy. And, I think the same, how many of us have heard, hey, but if you move, you'll have more energy. Like, yes, I will. Like, I want to get off the lounge.
Proving, I'm taking a nap. Forget that move.
Absolutely. But the reality is then, once you do something that is filling of your cup and you get the oxytocin and you get the air and you get the sunlight, it makes such a difference when you've done something for your body that then makes it in value to you. Because none of us can script what you do, but doing something that is valuable to your body and makes you feel good will then mean that your mind and your capacity is going to be a much easier process.
Yes.
I think the soul and the emotions is such a Pandora's box in itself. But again, I think it's around one, awareness of our emotions. And, as we said, the time of the month, the hormones that are doing for teenagers and grown-ups and everybody you work with. But being able to also have things that are going to settle you. So having things that work in the sense of your emotional regulation, if that means it's a sensory thing, if it means it's a calming element, whatever it is for you, to mean that if you're feeling physically your emotions are in a different place, you have a strategy to mean that it allows you to not feel as heightened. Because if our emotions go, that then tips us into fight, flight, and freeze, fawn response.
For sure.
Which is then going to affect your body, which is going to then affect your mind, which is then going to mean, who knows what you'll do at home. So it's that emotional thing that will, again, affect all of the pieces of that puzzle.
And then what is something they can do for their home, setting it up with their family or anything like that, that they can also help them with this as well?
Yeah, look, I think one of the big things for home is that working out what it is you need as an individual and communicating that with the people in your environment, which might mean that it's something, that you have a visual on the calendar that says, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to see you.
Yep.
Or it's something that allows you as a family unit to set up your environment to not be overstimulating, but also allow you to fill your bucket when you're there. So I know I've had other people with similarly, it's that whole, each person will have their own processing needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got kids who come home and they need to move and they're talking and they need to do, and you're going, I'm done. I don't want to listen to anyone.
I so can't handle this.
Yeah, that's right. So being able to have a system and an environment at home which allows everybody to then have what they need, because you have an understanding of that. So, is it that the lights are not on? We don't have bright lights because you've had enough all day in the fluoro lights of the office.
Oh yeah, I'm a vampire by the end. By the end of the day, I'm a vampire. You wouldn't even know I'm home.
That's right. So being able to set up your space to mean it moderates, and again, doesn't keep emptying your bucket, it actually starts to refill your bucket from whatever has happened in your day. And I think the other one I'd love to add is the home part, is even also your work environment. Because the home, I would, for me, my brain goes environment broadly. So, what is it you do similarly in the workspace that means you don't end up with an empty bucket? If you're in an open plan office, I think so many now, often more so now than ever, people using noise cancelling headphones, even if there's nothing playing on them, to mean that you can actually not have that auditory overload all day.
Yes.
But you actually, and again, as you said, everyone comes to you going, oh, yeah, oh, I've got headphones on.
Sorry. You can't see us all both pointing to our ears saying, pretending that, oh no, can't hear
right.
you.
But it means that then you have the control of your environment when you're in an open plan office. So controlling your environment to mean you don't empty your bucket, which then means your emotions don't get overloaded, which means your mind capacity is then preserved to make good decisions and not be in decision overload. Because you've, as you said, you've helped everyone else with their decisions, and then you have to do your own as well.
Yep, because we always put ourselves last for some reason.
Yeah.
So those are awesome, and I really know that every listener listening has definitely been like, yep, that's definitely me, yep, and throughout this entire podcast episode. But is there one last thing that came to your mind that you're like, listen, I need to say this one last tip or this one last quote or something for the listeners so that they can take it away, that would just be like, oh, right, and just land?
Look, I think the biggest thing I want to probably, which is where we started, is our decision fatigue is most likely to be really affected by all the other pieces of our life puzzle. So we can absolutely try to push through, but when we think about that is executive functioning, and we know that our executive functioning is going to be affected by our stress and our hormones and our anxiety and our food and our fluid and our sleep, is to have that awareness of going, if this is getting really hard, what else is going to be affecting that? Because I think we are so innately tuned to just push through and keep going. But if we actually stop focusing on how hard the decision fatigue is and we focus on some of those foundational things, it can probably find that it gets a bit easier.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining us today. And like I said, listeners are definitely probably having notes and going to be like, I'm going to listen to this again. And then for all the listeners, don't you worry, I will make sure that we have links to the books that she was talking about, as well as her own links to anything that she has as well. So thank you again so much, Stephanie, for joining me, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope it's been helpful.
Yes.
See you later.